Hello and welcome to another episode of the Occult podcast, where we do, or at least talk about, inadvisable things in the name of magical science. I am, as always, Tyler Cadmian, aka Shadow, and with me, besides the cat, the cat is an unwanted third party.
Hi, I'm Felix. I'm not the cat. I'm a guy who's named like he is a cat. And my middle name is S. And my last name is Warren. So, as you can hear, it's quite a chaotic night. He doesn't come out so bad whenever you actually listen to the podcast.
Yeah, it's just...
Anyway, our cat loves us very much and wants to be with us at all times. He can't right now, though.
No.
And that's kind of like time travel. You can't always be where you want to be. What if he could time travel right into here right now? What if my cat had time travel? He'd use it.
God.
He'd use it to be in here.
He'd use it to always be under the bed.
Yeah. So, did you have a particular anything that you wanted to talk about in the intro part of this?
I mean, time is really wiggity-woggity.
Isn't it, though?
We're dealing with a new year.
New year, who dis?
New year, new methane. New year, old methane.
I don't want to get too much into the methane stuff.
But, you know.
We are going to get there regardless.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so, tonight's guest is Venom.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all have met him before.
Pew pew.
Pew pew, gun guy.
Yeah, before he showed up in the airlock, apparently was part of a time travel agency, so...
Yeah, he's going to talk a lot about time travel, and, he's going to talk about some experiences that he and I have kind of shared when it comes to some things. He's had some, side effects from time travel, that, are like time nausea.
Yeah.
And I've had them too. He's going to talk about some stuff that involving time travel that I think that other people out there have experienced or will experience. Some of it is going to be like what happens if you do certain things accidentally. What if it turns out that you find out that you worked for a time agency in the past and you don't remember that anymore. You know, what happens if you just randomly body swap with somebody who happens to be in the time cops, and that's just like a thing that you do sometimes.
Dun dun dun.
Da da da. So, like, it's really interesting that Venom kind of comes from a completely different place than everybody else on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all, like, kind of from the same area of space, and he is a time traveler.
Right.
So, like, this whole time he hasn't really talked too much about being a time traveler. Because he's been kind of just trying to figure out what's been going on the ship.
Right. And... I mean, we're also, people on the ship have been talking a lot, about that, about being from the culture that they are, and, also talking a lot, I think, about, the fictionalized version of this.
Yeah. Well, so that's been one thing that both, Venom and I have had in common is that sometimes I can't talk about stuff like time travel or other worlds, other dimensions, aliens, certain parts of outer space. I have a lot of trouble talking about it unless I'm talking about fiction. I'm using Steven Universe as an analogy. I'm using, like, you know, some kind of video game phrasing to be able to talk about it. Sometimes I might need to show somebody a video or something that kind of talks sort of about the thing, and then I can kind of get at it.
Yeah.
And so we've been using the Peacock Planet comic that we've been making together as a way of being able to talk about some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. And we making it together is not talking about you and I.
Yeah, I'm talking about a whole gang of people over here.
Yes, Felix
in the Felix land.
Yeah, Felix has been channeling people like Venom to like write and draw this kind of stuff, and it's been very interesting to watch the evolution of it.
Yeah, like sometimes I do get to do some parts of it. Like I'll be able to illustrate a frame or two of the comic version of it, but the whole script is written by other people.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the idea behind it was that it was going to be a teaching aid to be able to explain to people some things about different psychic abilities or different things about time travel or space travel that are very hard to explain. And so Venom's got a whole segment. Basically, Chapter 2 is his.
Yes.
And it is like an entire teachable moment of a chapter when it comes to time travel. What happens if you go through an utter reality crash of an event?
Right.
What does that feel like, seem like? And even, like... Venom has a very particular way of looking at things. He has a very, very particular sense of humor.
Yes.
And so there's a lot in there that is very much about how Venom would handle a situation. But I think it helps you understand how anybody would, like, how it would be for anybody.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, it is much less straightforward than Chapter 1.
Oh,
Chapter 1 did have sort of like a progression and like an actual conversation with normal exposition and stuff like that. And this one is just like totally, it's a mind fuck.
So there is something going on there, and I can kind of talk about why it is like that, besides the fact that it's got different authors. For instance, Chapter 1, there's a character named Epsilon in it, and that is a person that I sometimes channel that, like, I know in my life, and who is telling a story through Peacock Planet.
Mm-hmm.
And some of what that person is doing through the Epsilon story is processing some PTSD.
Right.
And that PTSD is a very particular experience for Epsilon's author.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's some PTSD that Venom is processing that is in Chapter 2 of Peacock Planet, and it is entirely different PTSD.
Right.
Experienced by an entirely different person. And so both of them are processing PTSD, but a lot of the PTSD that Venom is processing is about going through non-chronologically linear trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, Epsilon's is about going through trauma induced psychically.
Right. I mean, so we have psychic trauma, and now in Chapter 1, and then Chapter 2 is about, like, basic time travel trauma.
Yeah, how time travel itself can become trauma before it even starts.
Right.
Whenever you have things like paradoxes and time loops built into the equation. Like, how do you get out of trauma whenever you're stuck in a time loop?
Right.
And PTSD itself can really feel like a time loop for anybody who experiences it in any way. So, like, Chapter 2 has been very strange to do in comparison to Chapter 1, because Chapter 1, and several other chapters after that, all the script is just written out, and it's done. It's fine. You know,
wait, how many chapters do you have scripts for at this point?
I think probably 5 or 6 more.
Whoa!
They got written out real fast towards the end of November and then into December.
Mm-hmm.
And then the latest one was, of course, Chapter 2, and the first part of that got written, like, right before Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the thing is that chapter has been entirely non-linear to write. It's out of order. It is like Pulp Fiction in terms of its pacing.
It's very interesting even to like track this because
you've been watching this happen.
Venom has been talking about this one particular thing. Like there has been Felix, you as well, have been talking about one particular scene that I think was just put up, what was it, today?
Yeah.
And like ever since the start of chapter 2, this has been the one pivotal scene that was written, I think the earliest of the...
Yeah, the one that was written around the 23rd or 24th of December.
And like comparatively, it has been obvious that it has been non-linear in its construction in comparison to chapter 1, because chapter 1, like I said, was very straightforward. It was like boom, 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 boom. But chapter 2, like, it is a product of the process, which is a very non-linear process. The picture for this most recent sorry, cats in the background, for the most recent page is like a sketch by sketch like recreate of an earlier page, but the earlier page was drawn first.
Yeah. And that's been like in my head, in Venom's head, in Epsilon's author's head, because he's been helping with the art for that. Rob's head, Rob has been working staff on Peacock Planet.
Right.
And like all of us have been like,
you got a whole little art studio all packaged up in one person.
It's really great because like each of us have different strengths as artists and creators. So I've been having like that transition in my head for a while, but like different artists have been kind of trading it back and forth,
right,
to work it in different panels. And so it's just him answering a payphone in Cuba.
Yeah.
It's that part has been in my head since that first script bit was written, because that was supposed to be how his story entered. But then the other part of the story got written later, got put in front, and the scene that leads into the flashback where he's answering the phone, he's posed exactly the same,
right,
but holding different objects and a different version of himself. A big part of the story is that you're seeing a character whose name is Zeta. Cruelly, there are two different characters who are different people going through completely different things, and they're both named Zeta, and they both look identical.
Strange that.
Sorry about that, but that's just the breaks.
That's just the story.
The guy who's going through time travel stuff we've been referring to as Chrono Zeta. And that is Venom's character. So Chrono Zeta, he is experiencing hallucinations of different versions of himself.
Right.
Basically trying to tell him to do things, or trying to help him do things, or trying to not help him do things. It's very unclear what is actually happening. It's a very, very unreliable narrator.
So much unreliable narrator.
And, like, so part of this is me dealing with some hypnosis PTSD, and
right,
several other people coming through and dealing with it as well. Because when you, like, when someone does covert hypnosis on you to, like, only say certain things about that person, then you become an unreliable narrator for them.
Right.
Like, that's, like, one example of what could happen. A lot of the stuff in Peacock Planet is about, like, government-level brainwashing when it comes to hypnosis. And so it's like, you know, what if the state hypnotized one of their agents to only think good things about their country? Like, you know, that makes you quite an unreliable narrator yourself when it comes to world events, depending on what country you're coming from.
Right.
And so, like, Chrono Zeta is aware because he's like actively time traveling and actively doing a job as a time traveler. He is aware of the fact that he has been hypnotized before and that he like can be messed with in certain ways, but he isn't aware of how many times he's been hypnotized before and what was the first time he has been hypnotized. And I think that he does show a chronic he definitely chronically forgets rule 0.
Yeah.
Assume you've already been hypnotized.
Yeah, it's very interesting to like sort of play with this character in this like pre-rule 0 state, I guess.
This is before he really learns better.
Yeah.
This whole chapter 2 is him going through all of the things that make him realize that he needs to do better.
This is such a bleak chapter, but I'm laughing so much because of the treatment of it. Like, this is horrible.
There's
the
a
subject
character
matter is horrible, but I'm laughing because of how, like, the exposition and the treatment of it just makes it much more palatable, and I gotta say kudos, because, like...
there's been a lot of guest artists coming in trying to figure out, like, there's a scene where someone gets electrocuted with a car battery. And it was like, how do I depict this without it actually being graphic? And the guest artist that came in, like, figured out, like, how to do it.
So good.
In a way that looked very artistic.
So good. Like, you could tell you've got the same artistic design as Chapter 1, because Chapter 1 was all about, like, telekinesis and psychic, and, like, how do you depict that visually? Telepathy, you know? How do you depict that? And, like, you handle the subject matter great, and now we're dealing with, like, time travel and torture, and it's like, how do you depict that visually?
Yeah, because, like, Chapter 1 has some of that as well, but it's like the main character is in an entirely different state of trance. Like,
right. They
don't really know whether they can see or hear anything.
Right.
And what they can see or hear is very unreliable. What Chrono Zeta is experiencing is, like, he can kind of see reality, but he can see 3 versions of himself transposed upon reality, all talking to him while reality is trying to happen to him.
It's great. It's like that, you know, shot in the middle, and it's just like freeze frame, and it's like, let me tell you how I got here.
Oh god, it is a little bit like that. So one thing that's been happening is that the comic's been kind of a pass-through for Venom to say a few things about time travel that he hasn't really been able to straight-on say.
Right.
And so I'm going to go ahead and take
Ooh, is he going to try to straight-on say it?
Well, I'm going to straight-on say it.
Ooh.
Before he gets here.
Oh, no.
So... what was it we were talking about right before that? You see how hard this has been?
Oh my god. Why do you do that to me? Now I'm brain fuck.
You know how hard this has been? This has been so hard.
I know.
So, no, I can get there. So, time travelers often use, kind of a version of themselves as a self-hypnosis sort of, like, trigger.
Yeah.
And it's very common for them to do this. And so that's why there's so many there's so many Chrono Zetas on the screen. There's 4 at once so far. It's because it's kind of standard boilerplate, like, instructions for the things to be like, hey, you know, imagine a version of yourself giving you the instructions, and then, like, you know it's from you because you did it.
Right.
And it's you. And, like, it's really saved on character design.
So it's interesting that you went back to Peacock Planet, because we were just actually talking about Venom.
I know, right?
I do want to point this out because, like, we're on the live stream.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like for science...
I mean, this has been a really difficult topic for me to talk about.
Right.
Like, the time travel stuff.
I do actually want to talk a little bit about our history with the topic.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Like, so we actually encountered this back in, like, 2021. Like, we were talking about this topic a lot because you had bought a eBay book.
Oh, Practical Time Travel.
Practical Time Travel was in there. Yeah. And we tried to release it, and methane got really bad.
Yeah, I could not finish illustrations of it. It was really hard to do the book scanning.
Mm-hmm.
Everything kept on getting in the way. Electronics were bugging out.
We're failing. Like, it wasn't just us, like, having memory issues or, like, dealing with that. We were literally having electronics, like, failing.
Yeah. Like, basically paranormal behavior backing up what would otherwise seem like...
random happenstance.
Just, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that comes along with time travel. And especially discussion about time travel is that first you have to accept that you can do that. And then you also have to accept that, like, psychic abilities and hypnosis can also travel with you through time.
Yeah. Like, using the story stuff as a way to, like, talk about it has been kind of required.
Yeah. Like, you need sort of an illustration of how it's happening to a character outside of yourself.
Yeah. And then there's, like, a lot of strictures in place about being able to talk about, like, being able to say, this is exactly what happened to me, and exactly how. Now, but if you have a story where it happens to a character...
Yeah.
Like, it can be incredibly similar, but, like, you can change details just enough to be able to get it out at least that first time.
Right. Yeah, I think, like, that's been really helping just continue the conversation when it's hard, is focusing on the sort of fictionalized version.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out when it becomes over-reliance on it. Because I think that's important information as well.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to talk over whatever it is that Venom's actually going to say whenever he
Right.
up.
No, I know that too.
So that's mostly what I'm saving up for when it comes to that.
Cool.
But, yeah. I wanted to talk about the experience of having done that.
Yeah.
Especially recently, because that's what I've mostly been doing.
Mm-hmm. Alright. You gonna get Venom?
I'm gonna get Venom.
He's gonna go get Venom.
I'm gonna go get him. He's over there.
He's over there.
I'm gonna go get him.
And he's not allowed to bring his gun.
Get him. Venom.
Hey, I do have to note, these people choose their own names or pseudonyms to be on this podcast. And so, Venom choosing the moniker Venom means that he has opened himself up to so many, like, Venom jokes and comparisons. And yes, we have been singing the Eminem Venom around him a lot. So.
0.
And he is doing his 3 steps. Like Mantis says we all should.
He's not the only reason we do it. You would say that right as I freaking come up.
Sorry. been a little bit sick for any of the listeners, and so that's the reason for the cough. But yeah, Venom is here.
I am
You
here.
are here.
So, yeah, actually,
Just remind people where you're calling in from.
I'm calling in from the ship, the spaceship that we are all on.
The spaceship that everyone but Ben is on.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then, so, last time you were here, you talked a lot about hypnosis and your gun.
Yeah, I talked about what it's like being the target of hypnosis,
Mm-hmm.
and having to deal with hypnosis. And that's actually a pretty good predecessor to what I'd like to talk about today, which is being a time traveler.
Yes.
And how that typically happens to a person.
Happens to a person.
Yes, I do not know of very many people who themselves happen to time travel.
Time travel didn't happen to them. They happened to time travel.
That's right.
Ooh.
I took a lot of notes, and I don't really know how much of this...
Oh my goodness! We have a person who's did homework before coming onto the podcast.
Yes, I have like a...
Venom's got notes and everything.
I do.
Did you... What?
I did this, we usually label these, so I did it at 5:16 p.m. today.
Aww. I feel so honored. You're the first one to actually bring notes.
Oh my goodness. Well, this is a very difficult subject for me to talk about. It's,
right.
Like, I'm extremely passionate about it, but, you know, whenever somebody has a non-disclosure agreement at a place that they work, you just, like, wait a couple years and then you don't have to do it anymore.
Right.
And until the non-disclosure agreement is up, they don't get to talk about something, but, like, if they, like, needed to just go, like, kind of sit alone in a closet somewhere where nobody could hear, like, say, like, I built missiles for the Pentagon to shoot at UFOs.
What is that? That is quite the example.
I canceled everyone's health insurance.
Oh god. Oh god.
So yeah. Imagine if they just couldn't even do that. If basically there was something keeping them from even saying that or thinking about it for those couple of years, or maybe ever. I'm dealing with that.
Gotcha.
So, Mantis telling me that I don't have a gun is the least of my worries. And I do have a gun, and it's mine, and it's with me at all times.
Yes. Except for right now.
It's not...
You can't have it physically here.
It is physically with me where I physically am.
Okay.
So,
yeah, we talked about your recent history, but some lore has been dropped.
The lore has been dropped. Yeah, well, I'm a time traveler. I had to come from somewhere, right? What the heck was I doing before this? The answer is it's very hard to tell. So if you're a time traveler, chances are that your past is not very linear. Mm-hmm. And mine is not at all very linear, which is very common for a lot of time travelers in my particular walk of life. So there's various ways that people get into time travel. Usually they start with a jump that either happens to them or they initiate due to things being very dangerous. We call that an anywhere but here jump. Mm-hmm. And there's actually, I would say, 3 different types of jumps that really matter. Mm-hmm. One is powered, which means you have a time machine. Congratulations. It worries about everything for you. I love my favorite kind of jump. Everything's taken care of. You want toast? Put the bread in the toaster. Hooray! And then there's a what I would call a body stable jump, and that is where you do not have a specific time machine built for doing your jump, but using what's at hand, you can be able to power the jump using some other kind of power source. Let's say you manage to hook up to an electrical grid or on a generator, or you've got magic Thanos crystal, I don't know. But you manage to power that thing, and you manage to displace the stress of time travel in a way that doesn't affect your body negatively.
Right.
And so that's a body stable jump. Like you've managed to, you did it. You did it the right way. You didn't have the machine, but you did it the right way. And then there's what we call a body depleting jump. And a body depleting jump is when someone desperately does the jump anyway, even though they don't have all of that stuff I just talked about offset.
Oh, okay. So basically it's like you can do it, but you're going to take some of your, like...
This is like when someone lifts a car.
Yeah.
You feel it later.
The adrenaline, like, type.
Yeah.
Survival instinct.
So a body depleting jump basically takes whatever it is that is in your body and whatever might be near your body. Like, you know, maybe you got a handful of batteries. I don't know.
Nom nom nom.
You might be on a car engine. Like you might be in a. No. Did you imagine someone eating the batteries? That's not going to happen. We're talking about real science here. Oh no.
Oh no. Oh no. We had a drinking malfunction. Oh dear. You.
You did that.
I know. I hit the mute and you calmed down.
Real science got angry at me. I'll never talk that way again, real science. Please don't hit me ever again. So, those are the three types of jumps.
I do gotta say, Venom, you are a fun person to talk to. And your sense of humor really comes through in chapter 2.
Thank you.
Like,
I'm sorry it's been so roundabout. I wish I could just talk about it more straight on.
I'm loving the way you do exposition. Galactic Time Standards Manual.
Oh, man.
That whole segment.
So,
just fucking dying.
Can I, like, rat on some previous agencies I've worked for?
Please, talk about whatever you want.
Like, I've written several of those manuals.
Uh-huh.
So, they typically hypnotize people with them. They're usually hypnosis installed. It's usually telepathic instead of, like, one-to-one listening to a tape or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done the writing for several of them. And usually they're like, oh, you're so good at this, you should be the one to write it. Who else would be able to do it so well? Kind of...
Sorry, for the folks at home.
He's meowing so hard.
We have a cat that desperately...
Should I just let him in?
Just let him in. He's gonna yell at the door.
He loves me so much, too.
Yes.
Okay, come on.
So,
get
I love that this is now recorded, like, just how much this cat reacts to you in comparison to other people.
He really does. Like... I'm not the only one that he does this for, but yes. I'm one of the ones that he really, really likes. Yeah, I know, but you gotta be shush now. You gotta be shush now. So, one thing I should mention is I come up here a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Up here, I don't really know how to describe it. I come over here to Earth in the apartment
get channeled
a lot.
And yeah.
And so I do a lot of household life stuff. I'm kind of in time travel detox right now.
Mm-hmm.
I made a big jump last year to be able to get onto the ship, and that wasn't anywhere but here jump. That was a body depleting jump.
Mm-hmm.
We're still figuring out what actually happened with that. Mm-hmm. It is not exactly like what is in the comic. The comic is helping demonstrate what it is that
could have happened.
Similar things that to what I have gone through.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's like being able to use, the Blorbo. Show me where the time travel hurt you on the doll.
Right.
And so, like, yeah, it is a way, writing in general, like, I have heard this so much as someone who has been through trauma and had therapy. Like, writing is a great way to get trauma out, especially if you're able to do it in a fictionalized way. I mean, the way I would do it would probably be some kind of, like, weird crack fanfic, but, like, I keep going back to Peacock Planet because, like, I'm just so impressed at, like, the originality and stuff like that.
So what's fun is that if I had actually been able to just straight out write what happened, it would have been interpreted as fiction anyway.
Right.
So it's kind of freeing to have the fiction angle because it means I'm not constrained to get things exactly right when I have memories that I really can't get right.
Right.
So one thing that is going on with that character, he's got the 3 versions of himself that he sees.
Yeah.
That's something similar to what I'm experiencing in that I had kind of agency life, syndicate life, and organization life.
Right.
Agency life was basically like doing little freelance bits here and there, like a detective would do, like a hard-boiled Prohibition era film noir detective. Most people use that aesthetic. It's very CoffeeZilla.
Yes.
He's got the vibe on that, definitely. Yeah. So, Syndicate sounds like it would all be Mafia, but actually quite a lot of time cop organizations are at Syndicate level. That's kind of like, you like work at a company that's kind of small but has about maybe 20 people, and they're at the startup phase, so they have like lots of money, and it's like the CEO's dream company. So you get like, a lot of groups like that at the Syndicate level where they're like boutique time travel operations. They're the most desirable to work at because the work experience is the best. At agency level, you do single agent kind of stuff.
Right.
And at syndicate level, you are often working in groups. They're very, very elite. Organization tends to be government, contractors for government, very corporate. And so I've kind of got 3 me's at each of those levels. And sometimes sorting out what happened to me in any particular time or to any particular me is kind of difficult.
Right.
Because sometimes the experience was identical across all 3. But sometimes it was very different.
Right. I mean, another story that we've been talking about in the house recently has been This Is How You Lose the Time War.
Oh, yes. That was very inspiring for Peacock Planet.
Yes. And, like, one of the things, like, my biggest complaint about it, like, was that it was progressing too linearly. Like, the story itself.
Yes.
And it was very frustrating, but, like, in that written medium, there's only so much that you can do. So, I'm really glad that you also have the visual medium, like the artist stuff, to really express a lot of this. And I mean, it's really interesting, like, especially with the time travel chapter 2 section of Peacock Planet, just really seeing how the medium portrays that even behind the scenes. Just seeing how out of order some things go, and then how it just sort of ties itself together. Because there's been times where, like, me or, other people who have been channeled in me to hang out, I guess, have seen, like, you or Rob or whoever's working on the page start working on something, and, like, from beginning to end, it makes a sort of linear sense, but then once you do the digital treatment, it's just like, oh my goodness. Like, that.
There's a vision in there. It's so hard to explain until the actual panel is up.
Right. And it's just really fascinating to watch. Especially with, like, the chapter 2 stuff, because, like, the timing sort of thing that comes in is very interesting.
Oh man, I was trying not to make noises. Makes noises.
It happens when you have notes.
So, excuse me for just a second.
Yep.
I want to talk about the manual.
Please.
I know that in Peacock Planet there is a manual that is kind of making fun of the manual, and the manual is the one that actually exists and that I deal with / use.
Right.
Now, the reality of time travel is that, like, oftentimes if you figure out you've been time traveling, you figure out that you've been time traveling for someone. Maybe you've been doing it as career, maybe you've been doing it as public service, maybe your family with the government, who knows. But if you've been doing time travel for a while, then you've probably been doing it officially for someone, and whoever it is, they probably have a manual. Mm-hmm. Manual is typically telepathically installed, and its purpose is to allow you to know whatever it is that you need to know about time travel at any given moment, in any given place in space and in time.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of things that you can't know at any given time simply because you, like, let's say that you're projecting into the body of somebody in, like, the Elizabethan period.
Right.
In Britain. That person knows a certain number of things about science.
So, in some cases, you're not actually physically transporting your body into that time period.
Sometimes it is not a full teleport.
Gotcha.
It is much like what I'm doing here, where I'm projecting my consciousness into Felix's body. So when you're doing the consciousness projection, it costs a lot less. Mm-hmm. But it means that wherever your body is, it needs good storage. It needs to be kept well. And if anybody gets a hold of it while you're out, then you're kind of at their mercy. Mm-hmm. So, like, part of the reason why people work for any kind of career track is because whoever it is that you work for keeps security on your body for the duration. And that's a pretty shiny penny to lure somebody in with. Right. Thankfully, I want a spaceship.
Right.
So I don't really have to worry about somebody sneaking up on me other than Mantis to hypnotize me again. But we already know that's going to happen, so it's nothing I need to worry about. I had to break it up somehow.
Yeah.
I actually really appreciate that Mantis makes me so aware of hypnosis, because otherwise I would probably forget what it is that I've been kind of experiencing sometimes.
I really appreciate, and that was part of the reason why my episode before last, the hypnosis should be peer reviewed.
Yes.
Like, with Rule 0 being in place, assume you've already been hypnotized, talking about hypnosis is sort of the only way that we could figure out what stuff was going on. And in some cases, like, you writing part of Peacock Planet is the only way to figure out that, hey, this was actually going on in my actual literal past. What the fuck?
Yeah, like, I was trying to talk about it before writing the material. And
right.
I kept on having to say things like, hey, maybe wouldn't it be interesting if, like, I would talk around it and never actually get it out.
Yes.
and I had to write a mock manual page on the subject matter to talk about Final Protocols.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about Final Protocols?
Go ahead.
So Final Protocols, this wouldn't just be with a time traveler, but it's basically like you're with any kind of company that decides that something needs to happen whenever you leave them. Let's say you work for the military. When you have a high clearance level as part of your work for the military. Once you stop working for the military, what happens to that high clearance level?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to have to be in your contract somewhere. So stuff like that is what would be in what I refer to as Final Protocols. Final Protocols basically says, well, what if there were certain things that were in your non-disclosure agreement that we simply could just get you to forget forever? And what if we never actually disclosed that to you in our employment agreement before you signed up with us as a company? And this is basically what most time travelers have dealt with by now. Mm-hmm. The time travel industry had a real crisis, I would call it, of consolidation. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, like, Final Protocols basically, usually yourself shows up. A hallucination of yourself shows up and hypnotizes you to forget about time travel, forget that it exists, make up a story as to what's been going on this whole time, find a normal place to live, get married, have kids, make a family, make little time travelers, but time travel doesn't exist.
Okay. Sounds kind of intense.
It is, and the problem is that many time travelers besides me experience this as well. I didn't work for just one place. Mm-hmm. So I have several different sets of Final Protocols that executed at some point. Mm-hmm. They're not all the same. Every one of them is different. Sometimes it's different depending upon your contract with a specific agency, but yeah, they all had particulars. Some of them just don't want you to talk about them.
Right.
And there's nothing there about actually forgetting anything.
So, it sounds like a lot of your trauma is actually... I hate to just say this like this, but
Go ahead.
Sounds like a lot of it is around the actual, like, bureaucracy of these departments and less about the time travel itself.
I couldn't say that's the only thing, but, like, it's different sort of trauma.
It is.
Like, there's some trauma that I don't think I could talk about on this podcast.
Yeah.
That involved, like, the physical torture.
Mm-hmm.
And that I express through the art that's in Peacock Planet.
Right.
But, like, when it comes to, yeah, the bureaucracy torture, there was a certain way that they timed the static in their call recordings that was, like, it seemed like it was cutting out, just happened to be cutting out, but it was hypnotically inducing.
Right.
And it was, like, combine that with just picking, like, the music that costs $5 less.
Yes.
Oh
my goodness.
And, you know, that's a kind of neuro-linguistic programming as well.
Right.
Doing stuff like that just sort of, it affects people mentally. And so, like, I think really, what I don't like is that I was actually in public service for, like, one branch of my employment. And I was trying to do some good things. And my whole place is just gone. Like, the place that I worked for, it just doesn't exist anymore. It's kind of like, there's a whole bunch of places that are kind of shutting down now that the presidency's changed over or is about to change over. Like a real sea change in town. And yeah, like, I did want to talk a little bit more about the manual. I know I'm, like, jumping around, but I looked back at my notes. And I don't want to just talk about things that depress me.
Yeah, I don't want this to be a depressing time for
This
you.
is like that part in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies where they're just hanging all the pirates.
Yo.
Oh, yo, a time traveler is fucked.
Yeah.
So, the manual. The idea behind the manual is that wherever you are, if you just kind of like sit down and write out a question as a prompt to the manual, then you will be able to write the answer to that question out.
And so it's like an automatic writing.
Yeah, you can write the entire manual through automatic writing. It will be different each time. It is not precisely memorized, and now, if you've worked for several different organizations, then you have several different manuals. And sometimes it's not too clear exactly how to ask each manual. So you can sometimes get conflicting advice. I consider the manual itself to just be advice. It can't really allow for the circumstances that you ever encounter.
For people who, for whatever reason, actually want to try time travel.
Yeah, or have already been doing it because that's how it works.
How do you know that you're writing an actual time travel manual versus just like your blurbo?
See if it works for you.
Okay.
You got, like, if you want to science it, you gotta test it out.
Cool.
And I'd say, like, ask it some testable questions. If you are already having problems when it comes to time travel, or you have questions when it comes to how does time travel work, go ahead and ask the manual, and that'll be a very good test to see if you have the manual, or if you have several manuals. And also to test out the advice that is given to you through them.
So, okay. Let's say one of our listeners is someone who has never done automatic writing before.
Okay. So is this now how to do automatic writing?
Yes.
Great. This is actually a really good question. So I would get out a notepad that you commonly associate with writing down actual written material. You can do this with drawing if you want. If you write best on blank paper, then get that out. But just whatever you write best on. I honestly suggest stuff like hotel notepads to be able to get out the first version. Sometimes you need to get it out on Post-its and then write out a better version after that. But just get out something to write on and ask the question, whatever the first question is. Sometimes it's how does time travel work? How do I do time travel is a lot of people's first question. How did I do time travel just now is another one. I mean, from there, it really depends on what's around you, what the answers are going to be, and also what your life experience is. Mm-hmm. And sometimes what experience of time travel you already have had that it's going to tell you about, that you don't know about. Which is very difficult to deal with sometimes, and I'm still dealing with it. Mm-hmm. If you do time travel, there's a good possibility you should just assume that you don't know all of what it is that you have done.
Time travel rule 0.
Rule -1, assume time travel is involved. That's one that I posted to my blog. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've talked a lot about like the manual and automatic writing and like things like that. But so I'm assuming if it's not like a manually assisted time travel jump, it's more likely to be more of a mental or consciousness jump than a full body time travel thing that you've had in your experience.
Most jumps are going to be consciousness jumps. Mm-hmm. Dream work, swapping, double consciousness, stuff where like you play a video game and it helps you do the parallel stuff. And that's simply due to resource resources handy and also the resources of your own body.
Right.
Unless you have a good hookup for an actual time machine. Which I will tell you, there is a way you could do that, but you would definitely have to get a hold of something that not many people can get a hold of. And it's probably through a government department that you...
Unobtainium?
It's probably through a government department you don't have access to.
Unobtainium from the Department of Unobtainium Reserves.
It's more like just the technology itself.
Right.
So, unless you can actually get a hold of the very few machines that could do this, then you're probably going to be doing consciousness casting.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, the way that you would be doing it is an anywhere but here jump that somehow you just happen to manage to be able to power with nearby resources, or you just happen to manage to get your body to survive.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely preferable, especially if you just want to get some practice in with time travel, you should be doing projection.
Mm-hmm.
If you already have a time machine handy that allows you to do this very easily.
If anyone has a time machine handy, can you please let us at BOP borrow it for science? Okay, thanks.
See, like, if you already have that, I assume that you already have superior manuals to what I have. Just gonna say that.
There we go.
So, yeah, consciousness casting is definitely the cheapest way to do it in terms of energy, and also, like, there's a lot less accidents that happen whenever you're just casting your consciousness somewhere. Like, if something happens in the middle of this, then, I'll wake up in the ship and I'll stop talking over here.
People used to be like, what, the?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but if, like, I actually had a problem doing a teleport over to here, then that's some real horror movie stuff.
That's some, like, Star Trek horror.
Yeah, and so, like, I was having, I think Felix mentioned that I was having time travel sickness?
Yes.
Yeah, so I did want to talk about time travel sickness at some point.
Sure.
And what the experience of time travel sickness is kind of feeling like that is happening to you. Mm-hmm. Like you are accidentally going through a portal and not landing on the other side and just being cast out through the universe as a weird particle forever.
Ooh.
Like your body actually feels like that is happening physically to it. You can experience weird heat, weird lack of heat. I ended up having to stand in the shower a lot. Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons why, like, I actually came down here to recover from some of this stuff is because I can't do a prolonged hot water shower in space.
Yeah.
That's not available, but I can here, and oh boy, it was nice to have that available.
Yeah.
So it's like a constant reminder of, like, hey, you are in a body in linear time, going 1-to-1. Things are happening. It's not just your imagination. You're experiencing real reality.
Right.
And so I had to just do stuff like that for a while. Mm-hmm. And some of that is just due to an overexposure to time travel.
Yeah.
Is the best explanation for what it is that has happened to me. I mean, when you're working for 3 different time travel organizations at once, and all of them shut down very randomly, in very bad, awful ways.
It's like a weird sort of addiction dependency.
And that's, like, people typically get into time travel career-wise because they want to keep doing it.
Right.
It's really hard to have the means to be able to do it physically without having access to a machine, and access to the machines is usually through.
And the big thing is
where
like I feel like a lot of people have, or like a significant subset of people have experienced some form of like reality shift, timeline shift, something that happened to them.
Yeah.
But no ability to like control it or do it in a controlled way. And I feel like, yeah, finding out that you're able to like basically control the flow of time would be very addicting.
It is extremely strange. I found a very strange wistfulness I was experiencing during time travel sickness, where it was like, hey, the experience of being in the particular place that I was time traveling to at the particular time that I was time traveling, I will never experience again because I was in that body and I will never be in that body again, in that reality again, and that world isn't even there anymore. And like just this strange ache about something that like couldn't be there anymore.
Yeah.
And a total mental obsession with it to the degree that like I couldn't really tell you why it's so important at this point. But at that time, it was just like that could have been for literally name anything or anyone,
Right.
and it would have just felt like the biggest thing in the world.
Right. Weird.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's definitely like that side of the aftermath, but it sounds like you are getting better. Like you're feeling better.
I am. Actually, I wrote out a manual page recently that helped me with stuff that I wanted to talk about on the podcast, if you didn't mind.
Okay.
This is part of my notes that I was writing today. I was inspired to write this morning, and actually thought it would make sense for the podcast too. So this is a kind of a mental worksheet for people who have recently time or reality jumped. For time travelers who have ended up in another reality recently.
Did you post this on...
I posted this one on Actual Psychic Ability and reblogged it to Bad Occult Advice and all of that.
Yes, so we'll be able to like reblog that and show a visual of it, so...
Yeah, this is the original handwritten version, so it might be a little bit different than what's up on the digital, but the digital is just like a bit more polished.
That's really cool.
So, the idea of this is... if you know that you have done a jump recently and you're having identity difficulties, if you're feeling disoriented, if you're feeling the actual physical symptoms of time travel sickness, you're having the nausea and the vertigo, going down this list of questions will help. One thing that I want to mention is you should not write these down. No one should have access to your answers to these questions.
So it's like an Inception, like, little spinny top totem thing.
Honestly, once you know the list, I think you would agree that no one should have access to this list of questions. It is a little bit too much biometric data about you. A little tiny bit too personal, in my opinion. So, like, first of all, there's a list of reminders. Eat, drink, rest, breathe.
Yes.
You're going to have to take care of your physical body if you've recently jumped. If you just now jumped into a body for the first time, you need to check in. Does it need watering? Does it need feeding? Does it need to go to the bathroom? Like, you just don't know if that's happened yet, and you've got to check in with that body first, because if you don't take care of that body, you ain't got nothing.
Right.
So... first off, that's kind of rule 0 for body jumping, is check in with the body.
Yeah.
So, just a little bit of general data. Date and time. Figure out what date and time it is. Get your location or address. Figure out what planet you're on, or what space station you're on, or whatever. And figure out what reality or timeline you're in. Some of that might be reaching a little bit too far or too high, but figure out how much of that you can figure out. It's all important data to know if you can even acquire it. So some reminders written after that, before, then after. Cause, then effect. Past, present, future. After you have done a jump, those are actually really important and powerful affirmations.
Yeah.
Because there's a part of you that does not remember which order it goes in.
Right.
So after this is the list of questions. But before that, I want to check in, because I've just been kind of reading this out. Like, any questions you have about
No, I
this?
think this is very interesting. I mean, I did see it on Tumblr earlier, so it seemed pretty straightforward to me, but, like, keep going.
Cool. So, I like insert food or consumable here.
Mm-hmm.
Not favorite, just I like spaghetti.
So, this really reminded me of the start of, like, every Doctor Who reincarnation.
I don't know about this.
Always...
Do they start... Oh, they figure out what their particulars are.
Yes.
I have seen a couple of these episodes.
So, that really reminded me of that.
Yeah. Now, they're kind of a brand new person figuring out everything
Right.
about themselves all at once. This is more like you end up somewhere and you're kind of reaffirming, okay, what is it about me?
Right.
And what's different... if you're landing in a different body than is your own, like, what's different between yourself and the body that you're in? Because, like, for instance, I actually have no problem eating olives.
Mm-hmm.
I can eat black olives on pizza and in Mexican food. And Felix hates them.
Olives. It's so funny.
Every now and then there'll be a can around because, you eat them.
Yeah.
And I'll just, eat one of them and be like, yeah, this tastes fine. I don't react to this at all. And he hates them. So yeah. And then the next thing is I do not like insert food or consumable here.
Yeah.
And just establishing a couple of data points about yourself, because after that a whole bunch of stuff will kind of come to you as you start to get that. My favorite color or other preference is insert thing here. What relationships am I in? With who? Something that's always the same about me no matter where I go.
Right.
Something that's always the same about me no matter who I am. And something I've experienced before very often.
Right.
Something I've never done. When this is all over and I'm back where I'm from, I am looking forward to... So, I was actually asked to write this manual page for the place that I worked that this is from. And I was asked to put a couple of things at the end to give the employee a positive outlook even if they were in a bad situation.
Right.
And so the next question was like, what am I expecting next? And after that, there's a blurb that I didn't quite write here, but I wrote into the digital version. Was like, I can always look back to the past.
Oh, man.
I can always face the present.
Oh, man.
I can always look forward to the future.
Oh, man.
And yeah, I was paid to write that.
I feel ya.
It was very motivational poster. They were having some morale problems.
Yeah, I feel ya.
So, yeah, that whole list, it's very simple. And you don't even have to have the manual page in front of you to do it, but just establishing a few data points about reality and yourself whenever you're experiencing any kind of unreality shift, any kind of weird dimension warp. It's very empowering. And it only takes a couple of little tacks down into the reality of space-time.
Yeah.
For you to really start feeling where you are and who you are.
That's really cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure we'll have another conversation about time travel. I know there's several other people of the people we've already had on the podcast that have also expressed interest in the topic, so I'm sure we'll bring it up again.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to more people talking about it too.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Yeah.
You're welcome. And thanks for letting me talk here. This has helped me talk about stuff that's been kind of hard for me to talk about.
Yeah. So, Any last words you want to give to any like budding time travelers that happen to listen to our podcast?
I don't want to depress you. But it is kind of like if you asked me if I had any advice for future bankers right after the 2008 financial crisis. Stay safe.
Stay sane.
It is very, very good to touch grass.
Mm-hmm.
It is very, very good to be stabilizing. It is important to access mental health resources.
It is important to pet an animal.
Yep. I am being begged at by a cat, so I guess he wants to get his cuddles in before I'm out.
Yes.
That's really adorable. You don't understand. This cat loves me so much. I can't go back into the time travel business. He won't let me.
He won't let you...
He won't let me go back into time travel. So, yeah, I'd say use time travel to supplement other things it is that you do, which you can do that quite a lot, and I think it's a very effective technique. But right now, it's not a really good industry. So...
Thank you again, Venom, and he is going to head out and let Felix come back. And we're going to have a bit of a wrap up and see, yep, Kat is currently trying to get Felix's attention now. And this is why we normally don't have him in.
0.
Because he does weird shit, like jump on people while they're trying to, like, de-channel. He can't wait. This is the cat show.
Oh, this is the first time I've ever zeroed while holding a cat.
Oh, man.
It's amazing.
So, yeah. A lot of interesting stuff that
he showed you his homework.
Yes, I was so surprised. I had no idea that he wrote notes and everything.
Oh, he was taking this very seriously. It's why he didn't want to do it last week. He really wanted to actually be able to talk about stuff.
Yeah, last week neither of us were feeling well, so we decided to just skip.
Yeah.
You know, very time travel of us, just like fast forward a week. So, yeah, he really shared a lot, gave me a lot to think about. I'm sure, as usual, this is going to be a topic of conversation in the household. But, you know, kind of, how are you feeling? Anything you want to add? Anything that you can recall from what he shared?
The manual stuff is really interesting. That stuff's pretty publicly accessible.
Yeah.
And there's other stuff similar to it that you can kind of access that, like, I think that anybody who tried automatic writing to get something like that would probably get something as a result. With the automatic writing, you start with that, and you can handwrite it, or you can type it.
Type it, yeah.
You can even narrate it if you want. But you start with that, and then you can kind of look over what it is that you got, and then do divination on that to get, like, you know, more information on what it is that you're looking at.
Yeah.
And it's a really good way to get past a couple of barriers between the conscious and the subconscious.
Yeah, automatic writing is a great, just general tool for unloading the subconscious, number one. And number two, if you do actually have the ability of, like, I don't want to call it farsight, but just like any sort of, like, distance telepathy and good writing, like, there's a specific type of typing that you can do where you're basically just, like, transcribing from a piece of paper to, like, onto a word processor that I learned. That means that, like, I can basically blank out my head and just type.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we've got, this is probably going to have to be a whole nother episode, but like I've gotten some very interesting automatic typing stuff. But like immediately when I was like reading the manual stuff in Peacock Planet, and when Venom was talking about it, I was just like thinking of like how automatic typing could be very interesting with it.
Yeah, Peacock Planet is definitely opening the door for a lot of the automatic writing stuff. Mm-hmm. And sort of showing the possibilities of what you can do with it. Because part of the idea was just demonstrating, like, hey, you know, everybody, do you not know how to talk about this kind of topic, or how to learn about this kind of topic? Why don't you just imagine that there's a form that you fill out to get help about it? Mm-hmm. And like, what would be the weird telepathic bureaucracy that handles that?
Right. I love the humor in the way things were handled, like I said earlier. But yeah, we're sort of circling back to what we talked about before. So I guess that's a good sign to sort of wrap it up.
Yeah, I think so.
So you can find us on badoccultadvice.tumblr.com. That's where we post all of our stuff, as well as links to usually announcements. This one wasn't announced. If you saw it in time, then congratulations. You officially like aced the time travel portion of your test.
You made it to the time traveler party. Good job.
Woo! If you happen to hear this not live on Twitch, congratulations. You access the recording of the time travel party. You can find that on Bad Occult Advice YouTube. We do have brief backups on Twitch, but that's where we back up our stuff right now. You can also send in questions if you want to send an ask to Bad Occult Advice, or you can send an email to badoccultadvice@gmail.com. Anything else you want to plug?
I actually kind of have an interesting little discussion point if you want to sit around here for maybe about 5 more minutes.
I mean, we can.
So, like, you know that UC Berkeley, I think it was, the time traveler party?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if all the listeners know, but there was a university department that threw a party for time travelers back in, I think, either the 70s or the 80s. Mm-hmm. And the idea was to prove whether or not time travel was real by seeing if a time traveler actually showed up at the party. And when no time travelers showed up at the party, they came to the conclusion that time travel wasn't real.
Right.
And it has actually been a discussion of like a topic of discussion in the household from time to time. Like, how do you get there?
Yeah.
And so, like, I kind of wanted to bring this up, you know, as
the
tail end of a time travel discussion.
After, at the very end.
Yeah.
Tyler dead. Okay.
So, like, I've thought through this, and I think at this point you have to be able to contact someone who was at the party to be able to verify, like, to find out a way to verify that you got there in the first place.
Right.
Like, how do you verify that you were at the time travel party?
Right.
You have to find one of the other people who are at the party and get them to be like, oh yeah, I remember you being there, or oh yeah, what you're talking about happened, and no one would know that unless they were there.
Right.
And so until we actually have that method of verification, it's kind of a moot point even how to do it.
Right, because you could show, like, the way Venom was talking, he could show up in the conscious.
He'd project into someone.
Yeah. Go ahead and say that again.
He'd project into someone.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's what I think what I would do if I were trying to get into the party, is I would project into somebody who was in there.
Yeah.
And for long enough to interact and be able to get a memory that I could report back with. And then from there, see, like, you know, is this good enough for you? If not, then I don't, really know
Yeah.
what it is that they're expecting from lay people time travelers.
Yeah.
And I think that they're only expecting what Venom is kind of calling like a very affluent sort of time traveler, or a career only of time traveler who has certain equipment.
And those who have that kind of equipment don't want to just like use it to prove to someone that yes, they can do it.
Well, I bet that there's kind of a gentleman's agreement that they just don't.
Yeah.
Because then only 20 of them would show up at that party.
And then it's all out in the open.
Yeah. And if any of them show up at that party in particular, it's all out in the open, because that's a very well documented time travel discussion.
So we
time
have
travel
debunked
community.
it.
Yeah, I've actually been kind of wondering all this time, why would you show up to the party?
Yeah.
And it's only if you've got something to prove, and I don't know, I'm kind of interested in the challenge of it, but I don't really feel like I have something to prove to these people in particular. I don't think they tried hard enough to get a time traveler there. I think they made it very...
throw down a big enough gauntlet.
Well, it's just not a very accessible party for a lot of people to show up to, which means that, they have kind of created a weird sort of detente. We need to do a
flash party of, a Timothée Chalamet, look-alike contest or something.
We need to do a flash mob of time travelers. Time travel flash mob.
Time travel flash mob.
All right.
Cool.
It's already happened.
Great. I don't have to plan anything.
Yeah.
All right. So this has been an episode of Bad Occult Podcast, where we at least talk about inadvisable things in the name of magical science. Thank you for showing up to the time traveler flash mob that has already happened. And we look forward to you joining us in the next episode.
Ciao.